I think I've always kept my wonder at the beauty of the world.
Nancy Susan Reynolds is a rare flower in American philanthropy. A poet might have described her as a violet by a mossy stone, half hidden from the eye. North Carolina Governor Terry Sanford called her the most remarkable woman in 20th century American philanthropy. And she did what few of us would have the means or modesty to do. She gave away millions of dollars in the name of Anonymous. In 1936, when she was only 26 years old, Nancy Susan Reynolds joined her surviving siblings in creating the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, named for their beloved brother, who had died young. For almost half a century, she was a distinguished trustee, seldom missing a meeting, serving a term as president of the foundation, and always asking discerning questions. When told that Reynolds scholarships were being used to recruit top students to Wake Forest University, which her family had helped endow, she responded, "What about the average student? The measure is in the majority." In 1952, when she established the ARCA Foundation in Washington, D.C. to empower citizens to help shape public policy, Nancy Susan Reynolds laid out her philosophy. Results need not be concrete or immediate. They may be uncertain and experimental. Although Nancy Susan Reynolds grew up in Winston-Salem on the Reynolds estate built by her parents, she insisted on paying the entrance fee when she returned for visits to the Reynolds House Museum of American Art, which had been opened to the public in 1968. When the gardens underwent extensive restorations, she quietly wrote the checks. Because she did not want to be known for her family's fortune, she moved away from North Carolina when she was an adult. At home on Quarry Farm in Greenwich, Connecticut, a wife, mother, and grandmother, she loved family and beauty and moral purpose. In all these ways, she reflected the legacy of her parents, R.J. Reynolds, a great industrialist, and Catherine Smith Reynolds, a great public citizen. Catherine Smith of Mount Airy, North Carolina, was imbued with a sense of what a woman could do from her years at the state's public women's college, present-day UNCG. And in 1904, she moved to Winston-Salem to take a secretarial job at the Reynolds Tobacco Company. She soon caught the attention of its president, R.J. Reynolds himself. After Catherine Smith entered a contest sponsored by the company, she laughed about Mr. Reynolds' increased regard for her. Nancy Susan Reynolds explained.
She won it, and then my father proposed, and she said she had no idea of marrying him. He was just marrying her for her money. And she'd won a $1,000 prize, I think is what it was. But that was a lot of money that day.
Mr. Reynolds had devoted most of his life to his work when he and Catherine Smith married. And although he died 13 years later, the marriage was the fulfillment of everything he had dreamed of.
You see, he was quite old to have started a family, because they didn't get married until he was 56. And he was 61 when I was born. And he was so delighted, I think, to have a family all of a sudden. That something really, really special to him. In some of the pictures you can see that. He's grinning from ear to ear when he picks us up, you know, laughing when they pull their hair.
Mr. Reynolds left to his capable wife the plan for building the family estate at Reynolds, where a working farm with crops and cattle shared the landscape with a beautiful garden and house. Local farmers were invited to come to Reynolds to observe new trends in agriculture, and farmers' children attended school on the estate with the 4 Reynolds children.
I think Mother was the boss in the house. I think my father enjoyed us. We were his entertainment, but she handled the discipline. And also, I think my mother was the one that really built Reynolds.
Dramatic changes in the roles of women took place during Nancy Susan Reynolds' lifetime, and she welcomed them.
I mean, I'm all for women's lib today, because I think a lot of things would have been different for me if people had had that philosophy. Now, for instance, Uncle Will, he didn't care whether I went to college or not. If I'd been a boy, he'd have made me. And that's wrong. I should have gone. And I think that's where I'm all for women's live today, because I think it's great.
Always behind the scenes, Nancy Susan Reynolds cultivated her own gardens, literally and figuratively. Believing that each of us should strive to leave the earth more beautiful than when we found it, she designed gardens of her own in Connecticut and at Musgrove Plantation on St. Simon's Island, Georgia. The seed had been planted in her imagination in North Carolina.
I got a little piece of land assigned to me. It was right near the dam. It's now a forest of trees. I dug it up and I planted it and I watered it, and I would do it about 5 o'clock in the morning before it was too hot. And I watered that garden so hard that everything died, everything.
Failure, however, was no excuse to stop striving. Nancy Susan Reynolds believed that fear of failure should never discourage us from taking risks for the right reasons. She was a visionary in her dreams for a brighter future, and perhaps her experiences as a child somehow made her want to see the world.
I was really 11, 12 years old before I wore glasses. When I really couldn't see before, I wanted glasses because I wanted to see. I never will forget coming home, and I had never realized how beautiful the world was. Well, I could see every leaf on the tree, and I think I've always kept my wonder at the beauty of the world. It made me appreciate it, to suddenly find that it was so different. Everything was bright.
Today, the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation, in partnership with the citizens of North Carolina, helps to brighten the future of our state. When Nancy Susan Reynolds died on January 11, 1985, her funeral service was held in Winston-Salem at the church her parents had built for the Reynolds estate. She was buried in the family cemetery at the Reynolds homestead in Kreitz, Virginia, where her father had been born and which she helped restore. In 1986, the trustees of the Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation established the Nancy Susan Reynolds Awards to recognize unsung heroes in their many different leadership roles in our state. Nancy Susan Reynolds identified herself as a Southerner and a Tar Heel born and bred. She left a legacy that lives on in the good works and the good lives of North Carolinians. Honor your father and mother, know yourself, and leave your place on earth better and more beautiful than you found it.